there everybody, it's Mike DiLisio, and today I'm going to be taking a look at OrthoGnomes. This is a two-player abstract game from publisher Phantom Lab, where each player is going to be placing out wooden blocks onto a shared board, and what they're essentially trying to do is get 4 in a row. Connect 4, but in a 3D type of a situation. Let's head over to the table, I'll show you how this plays out, and we'll come back here and I'll let you know what I think. OrthoGnomes is a two-player abstract game where you are going to be placing out each 6 blocks onto this shared board and then doing some scoring after all 12 blocks have been placed onto the board. Essentially, this is a 3D Connect 4 type of a game where you're going to score points if you have 4 of your symbol in a row from all of the different directions, including looking top down on it. So, first thing I want to point out is that this is a deluxe edition of the game. Really, the only difference between the standard and the deluxe edition is that the blocks are kind of black as their main motif, and they are white in the standard edition. And the Lazy Susan here is wooden in this edition, whereas it's plastic in the standard edition. But essentially, other than that, everything is exactly the same. On these blocks, you're going to see that they have a symbol on them that are going to denote whether they are lightness or darkness. This is the light symbol, that little circle there, and the darkness is the little kind of triangle that you have there. So everyone's going to take their pieces. You'll decide a first player randomly, and then whoever goes first is going to make the first block placement. There are some placement rules in the game, but they're relatively simple. The first one is that the first block placed has to cover this symbol in some way. So if let's say the lightness player was the first one to go, they can place their block in any way as long as it covers that symbol and stays within this 4x4 grid. So you could not place it like that. You could not place it like this because it's not covering that symbol. You can do this, you can do this, you can do that. Those types of things. So let's say that the first player is going to just go ahead and place right here. Alternating with the other player, they're going to place out their first block. So what they're trying to do is they're trying to get consecutive lines of 4 or more of their symbol. So in the case of the light player, their symbol is this kind of gold circle, and the darkness player is the white triangle. And so they're looking at it from every side of this game board, though, including looking straight down. So what they would have to do is play a piece that is perpendicular to a placed piece on the board, and right now there's only one placed piece. So they could do something along these lines if they wanted to. They could also do something like that if they wanted to. They could even stack and do something like that. But let's say for the purpose of argument that they go ahead and they just place right there. Then again, it would come back to the lightness player. They're going to look around, try to see if there's ways that they can get 4 of theirs in a row. Now, you have to play it perpendicular, and you cannot have parallel blocks. So I couldn't play it like this. I could not play it like that right next to the next one, but I could play it like this because while they're parallel in a plane, they're not necessarily actually parallel to each other. And so if I move this a little bit closer, you might be able to see that by placing that, I have 4 of the lightness symbols there. So you would continue alternating doing this until everyone has placed all their blocks, and the board might look something like this when that is done. So let's say it looked like this at the end of the game. One of the things that I didn't mention before is that there's really no height limit. You can go up as high as you want to, and if during the placement of a block you knock over any of the blocks, then that's an instant lose. And in this game, what you're going to do is you're going to be playing 2 rounds, alternating who goes first, and then after you have scored for both of those rounds, whoever has the highest total points will win. So let's say it looked like this. They recommend that you start here on this symbol because it's distinct from the others, and you score for both sides. So for every instance of 4 in a row, you would score a point. And so looking at this one, since I just did this relatively randomly, it looks like neither side actually scores, and you would go clockwise, and here I can see that there's 4 for light there, so they would score there. You would even count diagonals, but I don't see any diagonals there. Over here, you also don't have either scoring. Well, you can see because I was placing this randomly that I did not do very well on the scoring front. But you get the general idea. You're trying to do vertical, horizontal, diagonal, and then you could also would be scoring from the top. And looking at it here, I don't think I even did any scoring here. But that's the general idea. You'd score for each side, giving them points for every instance of 4 in a row that you would have. You would switch first players, score again, and whoever has the most points after 2 rounds of scoring will be the winner of OrthoGnomes. Let's head back. I'll let you know what I think. Okay, so there you see OrthoGnomes, and I feel like this is one of those games that once you understand the very basic kind of placement rules, and I will say that the way you place things perpendicular and you can't have parallel blocks, that can trip people up at the very beginning. But once you get the idea of it, it's a game that anybody can sit down and play. And it's also one of those games that when people are watching somebody play it, I have found that when people are watching, they immediately want to play it themselves too. It has a huge amount of table presence, and that is consistent among both versions of the game. And like I said in the overview, you were watching the deluxe edition, but really they're very close. I don't really feel like you're missing anything other than a wooden Lazy Susan instead of a plastic Lazy Susan. They both work fine. They all have really nice wooden blocks. They have a very nice drawstring bag that comes with it as well. So regardless of the edition, it's a looker on the table, and it's going to be something that people are going to watch, and they're going to kind of know what's happening and then want to play it themselves. And so that's one of the things I look for in an abstract game. Is it something that is relatively easy to pick up, but has a lot of depth within the play. And OrthoGnomes, I feel like, does that. The depth is really going to come in after you've played it several times, I feel, and you start to learn kind of how you can both be advantageous to yourself while also being disadvantageous to your opponent. And I think in the first few games, at least when I played it the first few times, I was really only focused on my scoring, okay? And that's understandable because that's the easiest thing to kind of parse is like, okay, where am I set up well for my 4 of a kinds? And that's your main focus. But after you've played it a number of times, you come to see that denying your opponent a point is essentially kind of the same as you scoring a point. And when you can do both, that's when it's, the sweet spot, when you can both deny them a point and give yourself a point on top of that through a single placement. That's when it feels really good, and it feels like a particularly clever move. It's a very tactical game, as you would understand. It's the board state is constantly changing, and if you set up a run of 4 in the first couple of turns of the game, it's very unlikely that that's still going to be there, both through the placement of your opponent and even through your own placement sometimes. Sometimes you'll purposely make a decision that cuts off one of your earlier 4s because it sets you up for potentially a larger grouping that is harder to block by your opponent. And so those are all the little subtleties that you find after a few times playing. I'm not going to say that it's the deepest abstract game out there. It clearly isn't. It's a very small, 4x4 board. And although you get more kind of depth than you normally would in a 4x4 abstract game because you're also looking at it from all the angles, you've got kind of the depths that play into it as well, it's still a relatively simple abstract game. But what it does, I think it does very well. It plays very quickly. You're essentially playing 2 games of it back to back, alternating who the start player is and kind of getting the aggregate of the scores. And I feel like that is just right. It definitely is a game that you can play multiple sessions on. I think most people would play multiple sessions of this game. I think the 2 rounds, it's still very, very quick. And even if you're playing very deliberately, I think that it's one of those games that kind of begs repeat plays. And as I said, it definitely is a looker on the table, and it's going to get the attention of anybody who may be watching you play as well. So with that being said, I think that OrthoGnomes is a abstract game that I can certainly recommend. I'm going to be giving it a 7.5 out of 10. The only kind of negatives I have to the game that kind of keep it from going a little bit higher is that I don't know that I love that there's a dexterity element to the game. You know, typically I look at abstracts as being more about the clever plays and the setting up your opponent and things along those lines. And having in this also stacking element that you can lose just by placing a block, incorrectly that causes things to fall over. I don't really love that. I understand that it was kind of a necessity in this game that there will be times you may knock stuff over and you have to be able to account for that. And it's not necessarily satisfying to just be like, oh, well, the round doesn't count, because there are some people out there. I mean, I can't imagine that it would be somebody that I would be playing with, I hope, but that can see that they're clearly in a losing position to just knock the thing over, right? So they had to account for it. But I don't necessarily love it in a strategy game. So there is that element of it that I don't love. And I feel like it is one of those games that's going to have, a shelf life. It's going to be something that after you've played it a bunch, you probably need to keep it on the shelf for a while before you come back to it again, because you are essentially doing the same thing over and over again. But that being said, it is certainly a game I recommend. It's a game that I'm keeping in my collection because I think it's a very unique abstract game with a very striking table presence. So there you go. That is OrthoGnomes. This is Mike DiLisio. I'll catch you on the next one.
Hey everybody, thanks for watching this video. If you like this review or whatever you just watched, wasn't it amazing? Check out our channel, Dice Tower. We have all kinds of things. We review games, we do top 10s, we play games live. It's all about board games, but especially the people who play them. Check out Dice Tower YouTube channel.